Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Evening Review. My name is Okito Greg, and today in studio with me is Dato Dr. Mohamad Rameez, the Head of Mission for the High Commission of Malaysia here in Namibia. Good day, sir.
Good day, Craig. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I understand that Malaysia is the head of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations this year, the chair. And I'd like you to educate us a little bit about ASEAN. What is it and how does it work?
As rightly pointed out by you, is the acronym, ASEAN is the acronym of the Southeast Asia Organization, and it's comprised of 10 countries currently, and we have one more country to come in, but the 10 countries are Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, Singapore, Brunei, Laos, Laos PDR, Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar, and Indonesia. So all 10 actually was created via the Declaration of Bangkok of 1967, 8th of August, that created ASEAN itself. Although at that time there were only 5 pioneer members because some of the countries did not gain its independence yet, like Brunei later on and few other countries. So after they gained their independence and after they decided to become part of the members of ASEAN, then ASEAN becomes 10 membership. And rightly pointed out just now, Timor-Leste is the 11th member as the chairman of ASEAN, Malaysia, this year from 1st of January until 31st December. So most probably with the concurrence, of course, the high contracting parties, according to the ASEAN Charter, we're going to receive Timor-Leste as our 11th member.
Excellent, excellent. Tell me, is it similar to our SADC grouping here in Southern Africa? You
have SADC and then the Southern African Development Community, of course. Yours is 60 members, of course. And then we have also the EAC, the 10 members. And we have also the African Union, the 55 nation bodies. And I think it's comprised of a regional grouping. And ASEAN also is a regional grouping in the sense that we believe that by having a collective voice, we can voice out our opinion as well as implement our so-called program, etc., more cohesively in a much better place. If you have one voice, sometimes it's quite difficult, especially in countries of ASEAN, somewhere near the South China Sea. You know that we have big powers like China, we have also big powers like India, and it is good to have a one voice, and with a population of 677 million people as a whole, and a GDP of 3.27 trillion, and we are considered the number 5th so-called state community in terms of economic wise. Of course, you have number 1 is US, China, Japan, Germany, and number 5 is ASEAN.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
You mentioned about the importance of voice, and I saw that earlier this year ASEAN did raise its voice in terms of the situation in Palestine. Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Recently, there was a so-called joint statement by the ASEAN leaders saying that when it comes to the issue of Palestine, we are very determined. We are steadfast in supporting the so-called two-state solution. And in fact, we also propagate the idea, ASEAN propagate the idea that of trying to ensure the welcoming of Palestine as a member states, once it is agreed upon by the so-called international body. So we also wanted to ensure that the ceasefire that was agreed recently will be maintained and in order to have a peaceful solution in that area, that peninsula. Yeah.
And I think you are also agreeing with Namibia, or Namibia also agrees and has stated a similar
Position.
stance. Yeah.
In fact, not just ASEAN, Malaysia itself, our Prime Minister, Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim, has been very steadfast, and Malaysia itself has been very steadfast that the so-called fight for self-determination, the so-called liberation struggle of the Palestinian people should be accommodated, and they are not in any sense a group which commit terror, but instead they are the ones supposed to be placed with sanctity and with place in the world as one of a state.
Yes, yes. I think that's a position that Namibia can identify with, given our history. Now, during your or Malaysia's chair of ASEAN, there's a certain theme that you are working towards. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Okay, the theme that ASEAN is propagating through Malaysia's chairmanship is that of inclusivity and sustainability. And I think when it comes to inclusivity, we are into the leverage of ensuring that member states of ASEAN, the 10 member states currently we have, all growing to a good economic improvement. We're trying to narrow down the so-called development gap, and also we also ensure that everyone participate in accordance to our ASEAN so-called principle, people-oriented approach.
Okay.
So Malaysia's chairmanship on inclusivity and sustainability via its team also include that of sustainability, meaning ensuring that whatever economic improvement, whatever economic growth that we want, it has to be sustained in the long term. It should not just be a short-term, medium-term leverage upon. And added to it, we also ensure that the SDG 17, that of sustainable development via so-called usage of understanding the so-called environmental impact should also be catered for our future generation. So when it comes to leveraging economic improvement and reducing development gap, we are into the so-called digitalization concept, where we need to ensure that all member states are equipped with digital transformation, and also our people-oriented approach. All of them must be literate enough and to ensure that they will avoid the so-called development gap between poor and rich. So inclusivity is to cater for everyone, and sustainability to ensure it's sustained in the long term, to cater also for the future generation of the people.
Excellent, excellent. And you've made some progress in terms of literacy over the years?
I think Malaysia gained its independence. Malaysia, for example, gained its independence in 1957, a bit astray from the topic of ASEAN, of course. And we were, as a nascent society, just given birth, many of us were illiterate those days. But through the education, empowerment, through the people-oriented approach that we adapted, I think many Malaysians has grown to become more literate. Literacy rate in Malaysia is very in a small digit, and that also transpire elsewhere in ASEAN. We have countries like the Philippines, Vietnam, Laos, which also has shown progress when it comes to literacy. Education is very vital, of essence. Without education, I personally don't believe that we can have a reduction in narrowing the so-called economic gap or development gap. And to ensure sustainability, we need education.
Excellent, excellent. Let's look at some of the pillars that ASEAN works with or is founded on. Specifically, the first one I'd like us to talk about is a bit of political security. How do you manage that, especially I understand that decisions in the association are always taken based on consensus. How do you get everybody to agree?
Okay, the so-called three pillars was actually a mastermind, or what we call it, the so-called being propagated by Malaysia when he was a champ. He assumed the chairmanship of ASEAN in 2015.
Okay.
So we wanted to have an ASEAN vision of 2025 to create an ASEAN community based on these three pillars.
Yeah.
And these three pillars are, as you rightly say, ASEAN Political Security Community, and then we have also the ASEAN Economic Community, and the third pillar is ASEAN Social Cultural Community. When it comes to your question just now with regard to ASEAN Political Security Community, we are into the equation that anything that need to get justified and need to get the concurrence of the member state, it should be based on ASEAN centrality or ASEAN unity. Decision should be made by consensus, and let's say one party, one member state said no, then we have to bite and agree to it. That's why we are a bit different if we consider with other regional groupings. There are some regional groupings which I do not want to name them. It depends on the voting system. But in ASEAN, is every member has their own vote, one country.
Okay.
So if let's say one country, when they discuss a communique and they decide that communique cannot be accepted by another country, then that communique won't go through.
Yeah.
So that's the issue of ASEAN consensus. So when it comes to ASEAN Political Security Community, as I mentioned earlier, with one voice, it's easier for us to vocalize our opinion or our so-called policies or our program. So if we have 10 member states, we have one voice against one big nation in that area, so they will listen, definitely. But if you are one country against that one big power, they will say, although you are sovereign states, yeah, sovereign states are equal, but it can be construed as how are you going to be equal to go against a big power.
Yes.
So when it comes to ASEAN Political Security Community, we agree to the issue that the area in South China Sea should be neutral. There should not be. It should be a nuclear-free zone area. Submarines or ship going through our seas or Straits of Malacca, for example, should be avoided. Bringing in nuclear, things, etc., etc. So we ensure that we are acting neutrally, whereby we do not support the US, we do not support China. We are neutral in the sense that we support everyone.
Yes.
So for us, we believe that is the concept of ASEAN centrality, the concept of ASEAN unity, where we propagate the idea, be friends with all, non-enemy with anything.
Okay.
Yeah, the same thing concept Namibia also propagated. Yeah.
Friend of all.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit about the progress made in terms of the economic community and also the social cultural community? I mean, bearing in mind that we are now in 2025.
In economic community-wise, I think, as I mentioned earlier, our GDP is 3.27 trillion in comparison, and our population-wise 667 million people. And we regenerate few things there, and you can see that Malaysia, for example, to make it as a sample, we were those days an agrarian kind of a nation. We grew rubber trees and etc. etc. But we grew from being an agrarian society to a industrial society, and now we are high-tech society. So it shows also via our GDP growth in Malaysia. We have more than $15,000 per income per GDP in Malaysia, for example, and with a population of 37 million. And in fact, economic growth is very of essence in ASEAN in order to ensure it is meant for everyone, inclusivity. In fact, our literacy rate also has been increasing, and our poverty rate also has been decreasing. It also interplays with other countries in ASEAN. Singapore, for example, is a developed nation.
Yes.
And then we have Indonesia also, and then we have Philippines, Vietnam, Indochina, for example, Cambodia, Laos, PDR, and Myanmar and Brunei, one of the richest state with oil and gas.
Yeah.
So in terms of economic wise, we are growing. We are number 5th largest economic in the world, as I mentioned earlier, after US, China, Japan, and Germany.
Yeah.
And we bring the theme of inclusivity and sustainability to ensure that our economic growth, the way that ASEAN propagate itself, not through one state but many states, also sustain towards our emulation of that kind of economic growth towards to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And most important element is political security, whereby we believe that every nation has their own sovereign. That's why we believe in ASEAN centrality. That's why we believe in ASEAN consensus. We do not want to push say that you have to follow us.
Yeah.
We try to resolve matters through negotiation table, not through wars.
Yeah.
We try to avoid crisis and conflict before it happens. That's most important. So we entangle together the political security, the economic, and when it comes to the third pillar, the ASEAN social cultural, because you were saying about it just now, we ensure also that we try to exchange social and cultural programs among ASEAN. The way our food is being served, the way that we exchange food, exchange cultural training program, learning processes, where we bring students from countries in ASEAN coming to Malaysia, Malaysia coming to ASEAN. Through that exchanges, through that avoiding of language barriers, we try to create a kind of society called the ASEAN Society.
Okay.
We wanted to have it in 2025. That is our vision. And by being a chair of ASEAN again in 2025, we are projecting the ASEAN Community Vision of 2045 in order to make it a long-term process, sustain it rather than a mid-term or short-term. And that's how we try to propagate ASEAN to become one of the so-called important regional blocks in the world. You rightly mentioned that when it comes to SADC, EAC, and the so-called African Union, you see there are issues pertaining to countries concerned in Africa.
Yes.
And I do not wish to speak on Africa because I do not want to create sensitivity. But how ASEAN project itself is, if we have a problem among each other, we try to resolve it through bilaterally. If we could not resolve it bilaterally, then through ASEAN is the best way in order to resolve the matters.
Okay, that's very interesting. Let's talk a little bit about Namibia, Malaysia, and our region and the ASEAN region. Is there cooperation? Is there trade? Is there exchanges happening? How far has it developed?
I think Malaysia and Namibia has smoothened its relationship, enhanced relationship ever since Namibia gains its independence. Malaysia has been in the forefront in assisting Namibia before independence via its participation in UNTAIC. And then after that, we also provided capacity training development to many Namibians to come to Malaysia in terms of not just education as per se, but also in irrigation perspective, in the correctional service facilities perspective, in economic wise. And we also endowed with some of our so-called experts. In fact, if you know, your first Bank of Namibia's governor is from Malaysia, Mr. Jafar Ahmad. So also he was then elevated as the chairman of Namibia. So, and then we have also exchanges of businesses in terms of having Ramatex those days, helping out. I think the thing about Namibia and Malaysia, our relationship is not just based on economic, it's also based on people oriented, where we have exchanges of visit coming in from each other leaders those days when your late founding father Sam Nujoma always visited Malaysia. I think he has been a fond tourist and visitor to Malaysia. So my sincere condolences to to the Namibians and the government of Namibia for the passing away of a great leader.
Thank you.
And I think when he came to Malaysia for the Langkawi International Dialogue, I was back then his protocol officer. That was in the middle 90s. So now I'm back in Namibia. So you see how things works.
Yeah.
And back to the issue of regional groupings about ASEAN and also about Namibia, I think we have in ASEAN we have 11 so-called dialogue partners, and we have also sectoral partners. We have also other partners, whereby it all depends on the leverage of how our relationship are with them. And via this partnership of ASEAN and this grouping of countries, then we enhance further our relationship in a better way, in addition to the normal existing of bilateral relations between each particular country with that country concerned. So as you say, as we say, one voice by a large group is much better than one voice by one group,
yes,
one state itself. Yeah.
As you will know, we've recently elected our incoming president, and she comes from the position of leading our MIRCO, our Foreign Affairs Ministry. So I wanted to get your take and also ASEAN's take regarding the reform of the United Nations, and where do you think the world will going, just as a ending, because we're almost out of time.
I think I will concur with what was earlier said by the African Union when they had a meeting in Addis Ababa recently,
yes,
from 15 to 16 of February, and that is also reiterated by Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres. In his speech, he says that the world has to change,
yes,
by the fact that Africa is a very leading voice. We have 55 countries altogether, 55 or 56, and you should have a permanent membership in the United Nations Security Council. That is the greatest form of discrimination that we're having right now at the UN forum, by not having an African country as a permanent member.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rameez. Thank you very much. And for you at home, thank you very much for joining us. And join us again tomorrow night when we'll have more discussions with another guest in studio. Good night.
Good night.